God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege, and this is the Protege program. Thank you all so much for joining me on this day after Christmas. Still coming to you from the past. This video being recorded on Friday. And I wanted to talk some more about the UN resolution to denounce the United States recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Now, I've said on a couple of occasions that the United Nations exists to fleece the United States Treasury and undermine the United States sovereignty. And if you needed evidence for that claim, I present it thusly to you. 128-9. UN General Assembly votes to declare U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital null and void. If this is not undermining the sovereignty of the United States, I don't know what is, and I'll explain why. In previous discussions about the capital of Israel, I said, does Israel as a sovereign state not have the right to declare her own capital? And now we come to the other side of the equation. So you had the state of Israel wants to declare her own capital, wants to set it up as such, and we've talked about that. If Israel is a sovereign state, she deserves the right to declare her own capital, and the United States acknowledging such is the United States' right as a sovereign state to engage in diplomacy with other sovereign states as the United States sees fit. The United Nations, in voting to declare this recognition null and void, is violating the United States' sovereignty. After all, if the United States were to say, Germany is not allowed to take in X 100,000 migrants from sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East, would that not be a violation of Germany's sovereignty? For one state to declare of another state, what you're doing is not politically correct, therefore it's evil and wrong and you can't do it, that's clearly violating sovereignty. There is some nuance to this violation of sovereignty with declarations type thing. You could get into moral arguments about whether or not one state has the right to violate another state's sovereignty over the interstate. Is that the right word? Is it inter or intrastate? I think it's intrastate actions within a state, null and void, over the moral arguments about that action. But this is not one of those times where the UN has just cause to interject itself into this discussion. And allow me to explain why that is. First off, the arguments for refusing to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel are as follows. And call me out if I get any of these wrong, or let me know if I miss any. Number one, it angers the Palestinians. That's the number one argument. It hurts the Palestinians' fifis. Therefore, Jerusalem can't be the capital of Israel. Now, the Israelis, the Jews, the Hebrews, the Israelites, whatever you want to call them, today, I believe the correct term is the Israelis. The Israelis have a historical claim on Jerusalem. Arguably, the Palestinians do as well. However, historically speaking, the Palestinians were there first. They were conquered by the Israelites. Israelites conquered by the Babylonians. Babylonians by the Persians, Persians by the Greeks, Greeks by the Romans. Jerusalem has been conquered multiple times. And you might start getting into this slippery slope kind of territory, you know. If we're going to say that the Palestinians have the best claim to the land that the Israelites are claiming as the capital of their land, then what right do people of a European background have to any territory in the North American continent? You could say that the Israelites, if they have no claim to Israel, have no claim to any land whatsoever. The real problem with this line of reasoning, however, is the identity politics behind it all. This is just coming to me as I'm talking about this. If you say that the identity of a Palestinian means that he has a ethical and a legitimate claim to a piece of territory, then it becomes ethical for that Palestinian to eject any person that's not a Palestinian from the territory on which he has a claim. And for better or for worse, to the victor of war go the spoils. It's the way that the world has always worked, and likely will always work. There are some victors in war times that have seen fit to relinquish those spoils of war back to the people from whom they have captured. Mexican-American War, when the United States Army conquered Mexico all the way to Mexico City and voluntarily relinquished that territory back to the Mexican government. The establishment of Israel in modern history as a state was, you could say, reparations to the Israelites, the Israelis, the Hebrews, the Jews, whatever you want to call them by, for the Holocaust. And this is where one of the great conflicts of identity politics comes into play. Anti-Semitism is haram in social justice because the Holocaust happened. Hitler is an evil person because of the Holocaust, and this is a primary tenet of social justice. However, the Palestinians are an oppressed people. This makes them a protected class in social justice. This means they are entitled to certain things in social justice. So you have anti-Semitism clashing with the rights of the oppressed Palestinians. And in this circumstance, you have an irreconcilable clash of interest. On the other hand, on the hand of recognizing sovereign states, you have the state of Israel. It's been established. For better or for worse, she is here to stay. I think it's for the better. I'll leave it up to you to decide if the existence of Israel is for better or for worse. But she's a state now. To obliterate the state of Israel from the map would be a violation of her sovereignty. If Israel is an immoral state, which the path that our society is headed down is becoming more and more difficult to say. We're getting into moral relativism. Moral relativism is becoming a norm in Western society. It's becoming more difficult to say whether or not states are moral states. But arguably, Israel is an incredibly moral state. In my opinion, Israel is a very moral state. And so, it would be immoral to violate the sovereignty of a moral, sovereign state for the sake of another state that is asserting a historical claim to the land that this moral state has conquered in a moral conquest. Palestinians lay a historical claim to this land that is being occupied by a sovereign state. And because they feel that their claim is justified, they have launched unprovoked attacks against the state of Israel. They've been backed by other sovereign states that don't have as much of a historical claim on the land. And I think I'm getting off in the weeds. I'm getting off into a place I didn't want to talk about. Whenever you start talking about sovereign states, and whenever you start talking about a situation that's as nuanced as the current state of the Israel-Palestine conflict, you're going to get off in the weeds in this kind of thing. But this is not what I really wanted to talk about. What I really wanted to talk about was the United States' sovereignty being violated by the United Nations, and the United Nations existing as an entity for the purpose of violating the sovereignty of the United States, undermining her sovereignty, fleecing her treasury, and that kind of a thing. And with that in mind, I wanted to bring up a statement written by an Obama CIA director. You might recognize his name. His name is John Brennan. Now, if you took the time to go and read the Politico column that I talked about in a recent video, you'll know that John Brennan is the person who wanted to engage diplomatically with Hezbollah, the terrorist arm of the state of Iran. John Brennan recently fired off a thinly veiled insult aimed toward Donald Trump, going so far as to compare the Republican president to narcissistic, vengeful autocrats. John Brennan is, of course, condemning the Trump administration, saying that they're role-playing as a... Oh man, I had this joke, and now I can't think of the name of the video game studio that Telltale. John Brennan is, of course, referring to the Trump administration role-playing as a Telltale video game, saying that they're going to remember the people that voted against them and Israel in this resolution where the United States the United Nations has decided to declare the United States recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital null and void. The tweet from John Brennan says, Trump administration threat to retaliate against nations that exercise sovereign right in UN to oppose U.S. position on Jerusalem is beyond outrageous. Shows at real Donald Trump expects blind loyalty and subservience from everyone, qualities usually found in narcissistic, vengeful autocrats. Ironic, considering that John Brennan served one of the most narcissistic, vengeful autocrats that's ever served in the United States presidency, who shall go unnamed. Now, it's not that the United Nations is simply opposing the United States. If the United Nations states, the 160 some odd of them that voted in this resolution, had just said, we disagree with the United States recognition of Jerusalem as the state of Israel's capital, that would have been one thing. That would have been their sovereign right to disagree with the United States diplomatic move. What they instead did was resolved as a coalition of states to take action to render the United States sovereign right null and void, which is a violation of the United States sovereign rights. And the man who is saying that this is the right of the United Nations is a person who is the head of the United States CIA. To appropriate a word from the social justice warriors, you can see that how this might be a little problematic. That a guy like this was running our CIA. that a guy like this, a guy that said the United States should engage diplomatically with Hezbollah, was the head of the CIA. You can see how this could be a problem. These are the kinds of people that were running the United States of America for the last 8 years. And you can see why the change from that administration to Trump is so important. And is not only so important, but is so dramatic in the eyes of these extremists, these far-left ideologues that were running the United States of America. You can see why the election of literally anybody but Hillary Clinton was so important. And somewhat unprofessionally, I've lost my train of thought. I got distracted getting off into the weeds there in the beginning of this video. But nevertheless, I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you'll leave a like, subscribe if you did enjoy this content, and hit the bell for notifications so that you don't miss a single video. This is Tuesday's video, so I'm on my way back into the office tomorrow. I'll be catching up with the news of the weekend that I have been unplugged from and ignoring. Hopefully you have enjoyed this extended holiday weekend. I hope that you all got to take a few extra days off and spend some time with your families and enjoy this holiday. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, and I hope that you're ready to get back into the swing of things. I'll be taking another extended weekend this coming weekend. It sounds weird to say that, seeing as how you'll be watching this video in the future. But I am planning on taking next Monday and Tuesday off from my day job, but I do plan on having videos to go up. So make sure that you subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so that you don't miss a single video. Until next time, good night, and God bless.